Hello everyone and welcome to the Cheap Art Supply Challenge. As you can tell, this is a collaboration with NerdECrafter. Make sure you go check out her video where I gave her the prompt fruit, but she also gave me the prompt horn and we had to combine those. So this is what we ended up with. Make sure you check out Jackie's channel at NerdECrafter. She does a lot of clay crafts that are specifically nerdy. Frankly, I am terrified, but let's see what I got at Dollarama. So because this is the Cheap Art Supply Challenge, I thought I would go 100% cheap art supplies, starting off with a sketchbook. Not only that, but I got some erasers and pencils, and these are all by the brand Studio, which I guess is the Dollarama brand. They did have like actual branded supplies like pencils and erasers, but I thought I would stick with the actual dollar brand thing because this is the cheap art supply, and although there are some decent supplies that are cheap, I thought I would go full cheap. And because I primarily work with watercolors, I thought I would do the cheap watercolor challenge. So here are my beautiful watercolor cakes, and I cannot wait to use them. They come with a brush or two, but they terrify me, so I thought I would buy some brushes. And this is what I ended up with. They didn't have the same brand, the Studio brand, as everything else, but they had a variety of brushes, and I have to say they are pretty pathetic. A lot of them are labeled as professional brushes, but moving on. I was looking for some waterproof liners, but I couldn't really find anything, and I wasn't entirely sure if ballpoint pens were waterproof. So I thought it would be fun to line my drawings with colored pencils. So I got myself some Studio brand colored pencils. Oh boy, oh boy. And last but not least, you are probably thinking, Kasey, where's the watercolor paper? Well, guess what? They don't sell watercolor paper. I know that sketchbook paper is not going to be able to hold watercolors. So the only other option I had was canvas, and I know watercolor doesn't work well with it. But here we are. I've got some canvas because I didn't know what else to get. So I have to say I'm quite terrified, but oh boy, let's get into it. I was opening the paintbrushes and they have this glue on them, super strong stuff. Poked me and now I'm bleeding, so good start. Before using any new art supplies, I do like to swatch it and see what it's like to work with, and also just to see what the colors are like, because let's be honest, no packaging or watercolor cake is the actual color that it looks like, so it's good to see what you're going to get before you start using them. As expected, these watercolors were very chalky, they were very hard to work with, it was really hard to get a smooth gradient, and it was really hard to get a smooth flat down. Like I said, I expected that because I used to use Artist Loft before I moved on to a more professional watercolor, and they pretty much worked the exact same way as these $1 ones, so I knew what I was getting into. And if you didn't notice in the swatches, yes, there were a lot of bristles that were falling into them because holy cow, these brushes, where do I even begin with these brushes? I don't want to crap on these supplies, but wow, to be marked as professional, oh my goodness, why do they do this? Just by putting my fingers lightly through them, they would just shed so many bristles. It was ridiculous. Every single drawing that I did, there are just bristles everywhere, all over the place. It was to the point where I just said, this is my life now, and just let it happen and didn't worry about it. But they got the job done, so I guess they pass. I didn't have anything against the pencil, the sketch pad, or the eraser. I'm not picky about my pencils. Like I've said, I don't know anything about pencils. Erasers seem to be pretty good overall no matter what kind you get. And a sketch pad is just a sketch pad. It's there for you to sketch, it's there for you to practice, so quality to me for a sketch pad just doesn't matter because you're just practicing. It's garbage just like my drawings, right? I have nothing against the canvas because honestly, I've never used a canvas before to paint things on because I've never used anything other than watercolor, and I always use watercolor paper. I've never used acrylic painting, I've never oil painted. I've been pretty much a digital artist up until a couple years ago, and I've been going hard on the watercolor. If I find something I like, I tend to stick to it. So what do I think about the watercolors? Before I sit here and take a big dookie on these watercolors, I did want to talk about the Cheap Art Supply Challenge before anyone got upset by my opinions. Basically, what is the point of the Cheap Art Supply Challenge? I guess it's similar to just seeing what you can do with the least amount of money. I know a lot of people take offense to this challenge because maybe they can't afford anything else, but I know for a fact that this challenge was not created to make fun of anybody. Maybe the point was just to show that you can create good art from anything, no matter what the price. Either way, I might talk a lot of crap about these supplies, but don't feel like that means you can't use them. It's a good idea to start off with cheaper art supplies so that you know if it's a good fit for you. I just feel very passionate about cheap watercolors because a lot of people get a bad impression from the bad quality, and then they think that watercolors are hard to work with or that they're just poopy. So I don't like people getting a bad impression or just being turned off by something because it's cheap, when in reality, it could be a lot better and easier to work with, and they could like it if they didn't try the cheapest thing. It's amazing the difference you can feel with cheap watercolors versus just the next step up. So just remember, I'm not making fun of anyone, okay? We're just here to have fun. And also look, my art looks just the same. My art's pretty basic, so it's not like I need anything fancy. I just like to have a smooth, flat color that you can't get with $1 art supplies. Alright, so like I said, these watercolors were very chalky and they were pretty hard to work with. I couldn't get a smooth gradient, it was hard to mix them together, but the one thing I do like about it is that they give you a lot of very bright colors, which forced me to work with very bright colors. Yes, I could have dulled them down a little bit or made a sap green, but I just kind of wanted to work with what they gave me because it was such a hassle to begin with that I just rolled with it. Honestly, I really like the bright colors in the set of illustrations that I did, and even though I normally like my earthy tones, it was nice to work bright, and I think it really works for these illustrations. And because they are so chalky, it is really hard to do layers because they do tend to bleed into each other because they are chalky, so they are absorbent of the water. So when you do try to layer them, they absorb it and spread out a lot, so it's really risky to even layer them. But thankfully, I rarely had a problem with that unless it was just really thick. Speaking of really thick, as you can see, the colored pencils were fine and I did like working with them, but unfortunately, when you use them on very thick watercolors, because it is just kind of like a chunk of chalk right there, the pencils were just scraping the paint up and it was so hard to layer the pencil on top of the paint. So I almost regretted not just getting a pen to do the line work. But in the end, I absolutely love the texture I was getting, especially because this is on canvas, so there's a lot of texture to work with to begin with. And even though it was a struggle to work with the thick bits of paint with the pencil scraping them up, it turned out pretty good, and I like it. I really enjoyed playing around with different colored line art like I wanted to do because I got the pencils, and also it gives it just a little bit of a softer line work when you do that. So that was a lot of fun. I really do want to try to play around with that if I don't forget. I think it's a little harder to mess up colored pencils. I don't use colored pencils a lot, and this isn't exactly the best way to test out the quality of colored pencils, but they seem to work fine and I didn't have anything against them. So good job, colored pencils. You got a good job out of me. But despite how hard it was to work with these art supplies, I couldn't resist creating a story and creating more illustrations. Let's cut to the clip where we show those. We? Who's we? So fast forward to the next day and I couldn't resist doing another 3 drawings to go along with this one because lately I have just really loved telling stories through my 500 drawing prompt series. So let's go through each of these drawings and I will tell you guys a story about the fate of this unicorn. So as you can see, we have this unicorn frolicking through the plains and it sees this apple tree in the distance. So it goes up to the tree and it's trying to get one of the apples off because it's so delicious. It has to have an apple. But it's too short. It can't reach them. So time goes on, the sun sets, and well, this is unicorn. This has not happened to unicorns, but for the sake of my story, I made up the fact that when the moonlight shines on a unicorn, it turns into a tree. So these unicorns, they see each other dead as a tree and they really want the apples. So they try to get the apple all day. The moon shines on them and they turn into a tree and they die. I don't know why I made that up, but I thought it was really interesting. I absolutely love the colors. Even though I don't normally like bright colors, I love the way that this one turned out. And it was just a lot of fun to put like textured stuff, so I think colored pencils might be something I want to play around with in the future. I also just like this one because it's really different compared to the other ones. And yeah. What do you guys think? Do you like my morbid story? I think all of my cute drawings end up as morbid stories. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my $1 challenge. I hope you enjoyed the story with my poor unicorn. Be sure to go watch NerdECrafter's $1 challenge. I cannot wait to see what she makes out of fruit and horn. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, including Michael Young, Jonathan Chihuahua, Zach Abstract, Lex CS, Shelby, Teresa, Megan, Lozo, Danielle Firecracker, Chris Side, Oni, Molly the Pug, and Mooney. If you want a shout out at the end of my videos, access to my sketchbook, coloring pages, and more, become my patron by clicking the link in the description. Thank you all so much for the support. Bye!